Preparing live stream. Hey, there we go. All right. Well, welcome to our Sunday golf chat. Today, I got a question that I'm going to lead off with from one of our Breaking 90 Blueprint users by the name of Russell. And Russell was saying that he'd like to see some stuff less about actually like how to hit the golf ball, but more about playing golf and how to do stuff like hitting a low shot to get out from under a tree, or how to hit from uneven lies, or choosing the right club around the greens. Getting more into that. How do we play a better game of golf versus how do I just make physical contact with the golf ball? So it's a great question. It's a completely valid point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of break that out into a couple segments. We'll see how much of it that we get through here tonight. But as I'm going along, if you have questions, make sure you drop the questions in the chat. We'll make sure that we get those answers. But for this specifically on how to kind of play a better game versus just hitting the shot, this comes down to a whole lot of willpower and intentionality. It takes so much effort, especially if you've never approached this thought before. I see I have a smudge on my glasses, but it takes so much effort to tell yourself to hit the conservative shot over and over and over again, because a lot of times it's not the sexy shot. And when it comes to playing better golf, and what I mean by playing better golf is I mean actually putting up the best score you can possibly shoot. What I'm talking about is actually making that smart decision time and time and time again. There's a great book called Zen Golf by Dr. Bob Rotella, and he talks about taking a conservative shot selection wise. So the safest shot you can think of, and then making a cocky or confident swing, which is something that we always want to do. We always want to feel confident in what we're doing. But when it comes to playing better golf, you have to think kind of two minds. Like every shot, you're essentially standing at a fork in the road. And that fork in the road is saying, I can take the aggressive shot and I might make it, or I might blade it over the green, or I might chunk it 4 feet in front of me. Or I can take the conservative shot, which may not give me a realistic shot of the ball going in the hole, but it sets up the next series of shots in a very appealing manner. Almost as if you're playing chess. When you're playing chess, you'll hear, 7 moves ahead? A lot of like really good chess players, they're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 moves ahead. I can't play chess like that. But that is exactly how I play golf. I stand at the tee box and I think about the hole backwards, from the green back to the tee box. And I try to put myself in the architect's shoes, which is kind of a weird, thing to think about. But I try to put myself in the architect's shoes so I can take this perspective of, how could I design a golf hole to really kind of penalize the golfer? If I had this plot of land, if I had this 400 yards to make up a golf hole, and I wanted to make it really challenging for a golfer, what would I do? And most of the time, if you think about the hole backwards, it really, really allows you to kind of get in that mindset of, how was this designed to catch me when I screw up? And so I'll kind of take myself from the middle of the green and I'll look at all the surrounding area around the green, if there's any bunkers or water, or even if there's like a waste area, like at the Oaks where I play, it's my home course. There's on the 11th hole, dead center of the green. If you go just over the back, there's a big waste bunker. Now it's just grass, but it's got a really high lip. And because it's just grass, it's really, really nasty. And it's really easy for your ball to get stuck like halfway down that lip because it's not sand or sod, it's just grass. So when I'm standing on that green, I kind of do like a mental, like 360-degree look of what is on and around that area. And then I look at, okay, if I'm not going to hit the green, where's the best spot for me to miss? Like, where would be the ideal spot? If I knew for some reason that I was never, ever, ever going to get here in regulation, what would be the best place to approach from? I figure that out. And then what I do is I go and put myself in that spot. So let's say I'm 25 yards off the green, but I'm on the left half because it opens it up and it allows me to just kind of look right down the barrel of the green. Okay, so I'm 25 yards off the green. Now, if this is like the best possible place for me to miss, how do I get here the easiest? What's the easiest way for me to get to this point right here? And I keep doing that until I'm back on the tee box. So maybe it's like a 7-iron that goes 150 yards and stops 25 yards short of the green. All right. Well, that 7-iron, if it goes 150 and I'm 25 yards short, that means I was 175 yards out. And so if I'm 175 yards out, what kind of shot led me there from the tee box? And you can kind of see how you start to put together a pattern. This is really kind of like the 101 level of that conservative shot, confident swing. Now, when we're looking at other situations, there's different variables that come into account. If you're looking at a hole that is reachable for you into, again, this, we're assuming it's a par 4. And I'll actually use the example that came up in my league this past week. I was playing a hole that was about, I want to say it was like 3. It's got a bunker on the right. It's got some greenside bunkers on the left. And it's a big wide green, but it's not the deepest green in the world. So it's wider than it is deep. So I knew that I really had to have some good control coming into that green. And I couldn't be making some crazy rescue shot out of nasty elephant grass. So I went with a 6-iron off the tee because I know that, you know, if the hole is 360 yards long, I hit my 6-iron somewhere around 180 yards, but because it's in a fairway, it's going to go a little bit farther. So I'm going to have essentially like 6-iron, 6-iron into the green. And I have my iron in my hand and I go up to the tee box and one of my playing partners says, "What are you doing? This isn't the US Open. Hit driver." Well, sure, I could. And I've played that course for years, hitting driver on every single par 4. And sometimes when the tees are up and I really get a hold of it, I could drive the green. You know, if the tee box is really forward and it's only playing like 320, I know that the way that that hole sets up, it sets up really well for a draw for me. And the ridge that kind of runs up to the green is always very dry. And so it's easy for me to get more roll than normal if I hit that spot. The problem is in the 10 or 11 years that this course has been open and the dozens, if not hundreds of times that I've played this course, I think I've driven that green twice. So let's just say 2 out of 100. That's not good odds. And that's what I'm hoping for. You know, I'm hoping to get the ball onto the green, but if I'm not getting the ball onto the green, what's going to happen? I am going to be in like super nasty grass left. And that is very, very difficult to even get the ball onto the green from this grass because it's knee high. Or I'm going to be in the same type of grass on the right-hand side. So again, very, very difficult to get the ball there. The green's surrounded by bunkers. So I've got a very narrow miss area from those spots. And even if I, let's say I hit the shot as best as I could, it went beautifully exactly where I wanted to, but it just didn't have the juice. Maybe I'm sitting at like 40 yards away from the green. That's not a good shot for me. I'm going to have a harder time hitting it close to the pin from 40 yards for me than I will from 100 yards or maybe even 150 yards, because I don't often play from there. So instead, I went 6-iron, and in this case, 8-iron, and I hit just short of the green and I rolled just onto the green. And it worked out fine. I 2-putted for par and I moved on. Now, do I feel like I had as good of a chance to make birdie as if I had hit a bigger club? No. But I also knew I had less of a chance of making bogey or double or triple. So yeah, I could have hit a 3-wood or a rescue club and been down around 120 or 100 yards or something like that. But I feel like I had more control with my 6-iron. And so I teed off with a 6-iron. So this is kind of how we can go about making these smart decisions, and it's not always just put the driver in the bag, but a lot of times when you think your way through a hole, if you start by thinking backwards from the green, you'll be able to figure out, okay, well, I'll hit driver off the tee, but you know what? I'm still going to have like an unrealistic distance going in. Like I was playing with a student, I want to say it was 2-3 weeks ago, and it was a par 4 and it was 440 yards, and there was all sorts of water running all the way down the right hand side, and I didn't feel super confident if I tried to bomb it and then tried to hit the shot in. And I was talking with my student who hits the ball quite a long ways but has even less control, and we were talking about the risk reward, and they said, well, I really want to hit driver because I know I'm not going to have a chance to get on in 2 if I don't. So I said, okay, well, if you really feel that strongly about hitting driver, what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be reaching back for every ounce of power that you have and really trying to crush it and just crossing your fingers and toes and hoping that it doesn't go in the drink? Or are you going to just take a smooth, comfortable swing that you may not feel will produce as much distance as you would hope, but will be much more controllable? And let's say you get 20 yards less, and now you've got 220 yards into the green instead of 200 yards into the green. Well, from 220, and honestly from 200 for this student who plays around a 16 handicap, I would much rather see them aim for an area about 20, 30 yards short of the green and know that they're not going to lose a ball to the hazard than be all gung ho about it and try to get on the green in one, or not in one, but in one shot, and suffer a penalty. Let's say 4 out of 10 shots, get actually onto the green maybe 1 out of 10, and then the other 6 out of 10 are some less than satisfactory shot in the middle. So this is how we can go about playing a better game, playing a smarter game, and mitigating our risk, because that's really what it's about. Golf is not a game of perfect. There's a whole book called that. Golf is not a game about what your best shot is, because your best shot is the same as my best shot, is the same as Tiger's best shot, is the same as Phil's or Koepka's or Rory's best shot. The limit to a good shot is the bottom of the cup. That's as good as it can get, and it's one stroke for everybody. But if you think about the other end of the spectrum, the limit for bad shots, there really is no limit. You could hit terrible shot after terrible shot, and you could just be in this downward spiral, and then you end up making a 10 or 11, or like me, I made a 13 on a par 3 in a tournament once because I was stubborn. Just full tin cup mode, put 5 balls in the water. But that was not me playing a conservative shot with a cocky swing. That was me being headstrong, going after the pin, and dumping half of the golf balls in my bag into the water on one hole. So this is kind of our thought process that we need to have. Now, when it comes to playing different types of shots, if you're under a tree and it's one of those situations where you can like barely move, well, let's say it's a pine tree, because it's almost always a pine tree where it's that dense. If you can get the club on the ball, your only goal should be to punch out in a manner that allows you to make a free and clear swing for your next shot. So if you do hit that drive and let's say it fades off to the right and it finds, a home under a pine tree, if you can actually get to it and hit the ball, just go ahead and do that. But let's use a lower lofted club, like maybe a 7-iron, 6-iron, 5-iron, something along those lines. And you're just trying to pop it, punch it back out to a distance where you can actually get a full swing on it. Now, you'll see the pros, they'll go and they'll hit these amazing miracle shots out from under trees. Don't do that. Temper your expectations. If you were really good enough to hit that amazing low hooking shot that ends up trickling onto the green, you probably wouldn't be under the tree in the first place. So let's do like an honest assessment test on ourselves and think about, hey, what am I really, really capable of doing? And then let's make a choice that reflects what I'm capable of rather than what I really, 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 really super duper fingers crossed hopes happens. So that's what we want to do when we're under a tree. If you can get something on it to keep it low and just really like 10, 15 feet will allow you most cases to make that next free and clear shot. If we're looking at how do we play, and this is part of Russell's question, how do we play like uneven lies? Some things that you want to always keep in mind is that the ground does absolutely have an impact on what you are going to see in your shot shape. And if you want to go back, and I can certainly in the description of this, I can put the episode link, but I talked to Bob Duncan, this is years ago, and he was a guest on the podcast, and he talked all about how he works with students on exactly this. And he's dropping all sorts of like, well, with a 3-degree slope, you're going to see like a 5 to 8 degree variance in direction. I don't know if those are the exact numbers, but he was referencing those figures in this podcast episode. So you can go to golfstrategyschool.com and we've got a search feature on there. Just search Bob Duncan and his episode will come up, and he talks all about how the slope can influence it. But just to kind of give you like a general overview, I've got my notebook here. If we have an uphill lie, so if I am standing here and the ball is above my feet, if we think about how the club is going to lay there, the heel of that club is going to hit first, and it is going to close the club face, and it is going to get that ball to go to the left. Now, if it's the opposite, the exact opposite is going to happen. If you're standing here and the ball's below your feet, you are going to naturally have a fade to that ball. What really gets a lot of people in trouble is making a less than committed swing in these situations. And oftentimes it's less committed, but with greater gusto. So they make a swing that is less trusted, but they're going at it 100% and just hoping that the contact is good. So they're coming at it at 110% power and just hoping they get something good. And inevitably the weight shifts incorrectly. They slide a little bit, they sway, they move the low point of the golf swing, and it's bad contact. That's not what we want to do. When you have an uneven lie, just like when it's super duper windy, one of the phrases that always stuck with me when I was a kid was swing easy when it's breezy. So if you're playing on a really windy day, slow your swing down, shorten your swing up, and just make sure your contact is solid. Same principle when you have an uneven lie. Shorten the swing in an effort to improve your contact. Now, you will not really lose a ton of distance here. If you go back to the Sunday conversation I had with David Hughes, he was talking about how we had been working together, and David went from shooting in the high hundreds to low hundreds to breaking 90. And then I want to say it was probably about 3 weeks ago from this recording, he actually broke 80. He shot 79. And he was saying like one of the big keys for him was to really shorten his swing so he had more control. And it wasn't short in the sense of like it was super jerky and exaggerated like that, but he was just focusing on not coming more than, a little bit more than halfway back, and then coming through to really focus on his contact. And that was a big turning point for him. And when you get into these uneven lies, that's another huge turning point. We want to have as few variables as possible in our golf swing all the time. If we have a lie that is giving us this, uneven slope to the shot, that is a variable that doesn't have anything to do with our swing. So if the course itself is introducing a variable that we have no control over, we need to think even harder about how we can remove variables from our swing, because this is going to add to the difficulty. So when we have that sloped shot, again, shorten up the swing. Let's get it more compact. Let's just focus on contact. Now, this is what we're talking about with our side hill shots, where the ball is either above or below our feet. What do you do if it's just uphill or downhill? I know a lot of people, especially with downhill shots, they really struggle with downhill. They top a lot of them, or they blade them. It's a little worm burner that just scoots along the ground. And in those circumstances, what we want to do is we actually want to level our shoulders to the slope of the hill. So when it's uphill, we want to take that lead shoulder and lift it up a little bit more. And that way, when we come through and we swing, if we can have our shoulders level to the slope of the ground, again, uphill or downhill, this is not the case for side hill, uphill or downhill, if we have our shoulders level to that hill, it is going to allow us to make a much better flush contact. So same thing, if it's downhill, we are going to make our trail shoulder. So if you're right-handed, that's your right shoulder. If you're left-handed, that's your left shoulder. You're going to take your trail shoulder and try and lift that up a little bit higher and adjust and level your shoulders to the slope of the ground. Again, in an effort to have that low point be as normal as possible. Again, you are still in that mindset of a shorter, more compact, more controlled swing, with our main goal being just solid contact. We don't want to be making these huge swings at the ball. If you feel that you need more distance, take another club. Honestly, most golfers could be better off if they just take one more club no matter what. If you're out there on the course and it's 150 yards and you say, oh, that's my 7-iron, hit a 6-iron. Because if we think about what happens on the imperfect shot, does it go farther or does it go shorter? It almost always goes shorter. So we know that the chances of us having an absolutely just perfect shot are extremely rare. I mean, we're talking 1%, less than 1%. PGA pros, even the people who win, even in their best rounds, in the course records, you ask them how many truly perfect shots did they have? They're going to say a handful, probably less than 5. So if a pro gets 5 truly perfect shots out of 65, what do you think your chances are to produce a perfect shot? It's kind of what you're asking yourself all the time. What are the chances of me hitting this perfectly? Probably not very good. Okay. Well, how do I make the imperfect look good? Well, I take another club because it's probably not going to go as far, so that way it won't be short. I'm going to focus on contact rather than trying to give it any extra juice. And I'm going to be comfortable with the result no matter what happens. So we're not pushing anything any more than we normally would. We're not trying to make any big egregious swings and sweeps at the ball. It's simply something that we are trying, we're trying to get. It's almost like the lowest common denominator with math. We are just trying to make consistent, solid contact. Like, that's the first thing that we want to do. Once we get consistent, solid contact, we want to have consistent shape to the shot. If we have a consistent shape to the shot, then, we can really start to play some serious good golf. And it doesn't matter if it's a fade, it doesn't matter if it's a draw. But if you have consistent contact and you have consistent shape, you're going to be leaps and bounds better than the next person in line. The next true test for you at that point is, can you commit to only worrying about those two things and just trying to get on the green, not trying to go for the pin, trying to leave yourself in a shot where you can recover easily if it were to go wrong. Now, the other part of the question that Russell had here was, like, what are we doing kind of on and around the greens? What should we be thinking of if we are, if we're trying to play smart and we do have that, 20, 25, 30 yard chip shot, because it's kind of an uncomfortable distance for everybody. I mean, let's be honest. There's nothing worse than that awkward in between chip shot. So when we're chipping, I always say you want the ball on the ground as soon as possible. And this comes from Brandon Stewksbury, who's a short game guru, PGA instructor out of Georgia. He's multiple times been the state teacher of the year in Georgia. And he's on Golf Digest's best young teachers list as well. And he talked about how, you want that ball on the ground as soon as possible. So my way of viewing that is, if you can putt, you do putt. Period. If you can putt, you do putt. Now, if it is too far to putt, like, 20, 25 yards, we still want that ball to be on the ground as soon as possible. So rather than taking out a sand wedge or a lob wedge and trying to fly it 10 feet short of the hole, land it, and have it trickle out, I would rather you try to land the ball either just short of the green or just onto the green and let it roll and continue to the cup. I gotta take a quick drink here. My voice is hurting me. So now, if we are, if we're making this kind of true effort to have the ball on the ground as soon as possible, you almost need to think about this as almost as like playing catapults, or remember paper football? You fold the little triangular piece of paper, and that's your football. And, someone else is going to give you the field goal post, and you're trying to, flick it through the uprights there. These are all parallels to chipping with this kind of mindset. So you want to keep the ball as close to the ground as possible in an effort to, again, mitigate that potential catastrophic shot. You want to do everything that you can to lower the chances of there being a catastrophic result. Because if you're 25 yards away and you're using a lob wedge, there's a much better chance that you're going to chunk or skull your lob wedge and still be chipping than if you were to take like a 9-iron and just make like an exaggerated putting stroke and have the ball land just short of the green and then trickle on, or just onto the green and run maybe 5 or 10 feet by the hole. This all rolls back to making sure we are guarding against that catastrophic result. And once we can consistently guard against that catastrophic result, we are going to be then at that point shifting our mindset ever so slightly to really try and take advantage of our opportunities. It doesn't mean we're going to be aggressive. It just means that when we do see an opportunity, we're going to take it rather than play the absolute safest shot ever. So if we're talking again about these kind of in-between chipping distances, bump and run all the way. Unless there's something like, if you've got a bunker in between you and the pin, your hands are kind of tied. You have to hit the ball up in the air and land it softly, or at least try to. But if there's no bunker, which again comes back to, hey, where do I need to aim in case I miss so I don't have to hit it over a bunker? Then we can make that conservative bump and run chip shot that's still going to leave us a very, very good chance of making that follow up putt and getting up and down. Now, if you're more in the 40, 50, 60 yard area and you don't, it's still not like a full swing. Because for me, my lob wedge goes like 80, 85 yards. So if I'm at 70 yards and I hit a full lob wedge, I know I'm missing long. If I'm at 60 yards, I'm absolutely manipulating, the pace of my swing in an effort to land the ball somewhere on or around my target. That's the other thing. You absolutely want to be focusing on where you want the ball to land, not the flag, because the flag is not where you want the ball to land. Because if the ball lands at the flag, it's going to go ripping by it. But what you can do is, and this takes practice, there's no getting around it. What you can do is you can practice having a very similar swing and simply changing clubs and allowing the difference in loft to do the work for you. So maybe 30 yards is like a pocket to pocket, not 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, but really kind of only getting your hands just beyond your hips. Maybe 30 yards is a pocket to pocket pitching wedge. And then maybe 40 yards is a pocket to pocket 9-iron. And you can see how we're layering, just taking another club and getting a little bit more distance because it's coming out a little bit stronger, a little bit lower trajectory, but we don't have to change anything about our swing. Just like with full swings, right? You take that full swing about 3/4 of the way back and you come through at 75 to 80% of your maximum power. And if you need a different distance, you don't change the swing, you change the club. So same thing in those weird in between on around the green areas. You want to have the same swing and just use a different club. The other thing that you could do if you really don't like changing clubs, you could work on a 25-yard solution, a 50-yard solution, and a 75-yard solution. And I stop it there because 75 and up, that's probably pretty close to a full swing for most people on some club. But you could work on a 25-yard solution, a 50-yard solution, and a 75-yard solution. And what you do is you know exactly how to hit that 25-yard shot. And then you practice a bunch from 50 yards. And you know exactly how to hit that 50-yard shot. And same thing from 75. And then anytime you're in between there, you always take the longer shot. So if you've got a 25 and a 50-yard solution and you have a 40-yard shot, you hit your 50-yard shot. Again, knowing that it's probably not going to be exactly perfect. It's probably going to come up a little bit short. And that's going to give you a much better outcome on a more consistent basis. So if you're at 45 yards, again, 50-yard shot. If you're at 55 yards, I know it sounds contradictory, but if you're at 55 yards, hit the 75-yard shot. I know it sounds weird, but hit the 75-yard shot because chances are it's not going to go as great as you had planned. And then you're still going to be on the green. The only time where I would say stick to that 50-yard shot is if it is 50 yards and that pin is all the way at the back. If it's 50 yards and the pin's all the way back, then hit the 50-yard shot because you'll probably land somewhere around 1/3 of the way onto the green and then it can roll toward the flag. But otherwise, always take the longer shot because if you don't make a perfect shot, it's going to go less than the full distance. And so that's what you want to do. I've been talking a lot. I see that we have people watching here. Do we have any questions before I kind of wrap this up? I've been yapping and yapping and yapping. I see that we've got people watching. Do you guys have any questions that I could answer for you? And I'm going to take another drink of water. It was super duper hot today, so I didn't even get a chance to get out and play golf. I was kind of dehydrated from working out in the yard yesterday. Figured it was a good time to just kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit, recharge, recuperate. So, all right. Well, I don't see any questions coming through on the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and end this. Thank you so much for joining me on our Sunday night Q&A. If you want to learn more about golf, make sure you sign up for my newsletter. I've got 3 different trainings that you could opt into. If you want to learn how I teach my mental game strategy in my Breaking 90 blueprint, if you want to learn about 3 of my favorite short game lessons, like specifically the practice routines that you do to kind of sharpen your short game, or if you want to go through, and this is something that I just did, I want to say it was 8 days ago. Yeah, not this past Monday, but the Monday prior. If you want to learn about how to diagnose your own swing flaws, just check out the notes here, the description, and I'll link all 3 of those trainings in there. Feel free to sign up for whichever one best suits your needs right now. And hey, I'm happy to talk to you. And as always, I'll catch you in the short grass. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.